Welcome to the best of first-person episodes from Phantoms and Monsters. Please like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you'll be notified of all future uploads.
Pale humanoid, strange activity at home in Middlesex County, Massachusetts. I have no clue what is going on. I live in north-central Massachusetts in Middlesex County, in the middle of the woods. We're a few miles out of town. For the past few months, my family and I have become convinced our house is haunted, but I wasn't really bothered by it. Whatever it is, isn't too much of a nuisance, and hasn't done anything to harm us, so we don't really mind. It has mostly just been apparitions, things turning on their own, and our pets getting spooked by nothing. That was until the more physical things started to happen, and I'm not sure if they are somehow connected to the peaceful presence in our house. About a month ago I was up late around 3 a.m. watching YouTube. It was warm out, so I had my window open along with the curtain. Suddenly, I heard what sounded like a grown man angrily scream right in our yard. My heart literally dropped, and I was frozen in fear. Like I said before, we're in the middle of the woods, and there are only a few houses around us. No one would be screaming in our yard at 3 a.m. I laid there for a few minutes listening for anything else, and I even renewed the video I was watching to make sure what I heard wasn't just in the video. Finally, I got the courage to get up. I closed my window and woke up my mom, who I still live with. She went around the house with me, turning on all the outside lights and seeing if there was anyone in our yard. There was nothing. I keep thinking about how, if I hadn't laid there paralyzed with fear, I would have been able to see whoever or whatever it was. The next night I slept with my window open again, and I had the most vivid dream I have ever had. In it, I was watching myself sleep, but outside the window staring in at me was the extremely pale face. It looked almost human, but not quite. I ended up jolting away completely terrified, and slamming my window shut, and closing the shade. But I just kept having the dream over and over again for the next few days. Over the next few weeks, I kept hearing weird noises in the woods in broad daylight as well as late at night. It sounded like something was hitting branches with a stick. Even my dog heard it, and was running around the yard barking up a storm in an attempt to defend his house. Fast forward to yesterday, my brother was home alone around 9 p.m. He went to let our dog outside, but when he got out onto our indoor porch he saw something in the yard. The only light in the backyard was coming from the light inside the house. It illuminated a tall humanoid figure, maybe around 7 foot, in the yard, standing about 15 feet away from the house, right in front of our fire pit. It had no clothes on, was incredibly skinny, and it apparently was so pale that it appeared to glow in the light. Thankfully, he did not let our dog out, and went inside locking the doors and shutting the windows, waiting for our mom to get home. I know that he could just be lying, but when our mom got home he was absolutely terrified, and basically just hid in the living room until she got there. I've known him his whole life, and he has never lied about something like this, and is in fact a horrible liar. So I'm confident he is telling the truth. I'm currently sitting out on my indoor porch at around 8 p.m. typing this, waiting to see if I can spot it, or at least hear something. I'm honestly debating on whether or not I should sleep out here. I did a little reading beforehand on some creatures, and came across the mention of crawlers. When my brother described it, he said it was standing completely upright. He didn't see it walk or crawl in any way. Could it still be a crawler? Are we in any danger? And is it possible that it is somehow connected to the paranormal stuff that has been happening in our house? About 3 or 4 days after my original email, my brother saw the creature again. I was home, but I was in the middle of a long nap in my room, so it was just my brother and my mom. It was probably around 8 p.m. and my mom was in the living room on the phone, and my brother was just watching TV beside her. Our dog was outside and started barking at something, and keep in mind that he always does this. He'll bark at any living creature he sees on our property or walking in front of the house on the road, so neither of them thought anything about it. My brother got up to let him in and walk onto our indoor porch and look out to see what our dog was barking at. He saw the creature again, about 10 feet from where he saw it originally, staring at the house again. He ran back to the living room to get our mom, who came out to look. By the time they got to the porch, the creature was just gone. I'm just not convinced something is going on after my brother saw it the second time. He started saying that he's scared, he's just hallucinating, and his mind or eyes were just playing tricks on him. Especially since when he got my mom, the creature had disappeared within that 15 seconds without even the smallest trace. So because he was starting to be convinced it was just a trick his eyes played on him, I stopped believing that he actually saw a crawler. I just kind of stopped caring. My one class for yesterday was cancelled, so I spent the whole day just lounging around. I completely forgot about making myself dinner, so it was about 11:45 p.m. when I remembered. I was just quickly making some chili when my mom got up to let my dog outside. It had been downpouring all day, so my dog had only gone outside twice during the day because he's terrified of rain. My mom went back to bed and left me to let him in when he's done. I finished making my dinner about 10 minutes later and decided to go call him to have him come back inside. Once I called him, I heard something big move in the woods as if it reacted to my voice. Immediately after that, my dog came charging from the other side of the yard and proceeded to freak out over whatever was hidden in the trees. I kept calling him, but he would not stop barking and growling no matter what. I even shouted out some of his favorite phrases, but he didn't react to any of them at all, which was super strange because he always does, no matter how distracted he is. This went on for a few minutes, and it got to the point where my mom and my sister came out, so we could all try to call him back inside. We didn't want him to wake up the entire neighborhood. Now, I don't know if I'm brave, or just literally the stupidest person alive, but I decided to just go out into our woodsy backyard, barefoot, in the middle of the night to force him to come inside. It was about 40 degrees Fahrenheit, and I was literally only wearing a sports bra and shorts. I was pissed off and just wanted to eat my food. I went outside and walked down the steps from the indoor porch, and I was about 10 feet into the yard when I heard whatever it was move in the woods again in response to me walking into the yard. I literally froze for a few seconds, and I heard my sister from above me on the porch go, "What the frick was that?" I didn't really care when I heard it move when I was on the porch, but hearing it maybe not even 30 feet from me when there aren't any wolves around me, scared the crap out of me. Regardless, I started walking again towards my dog to put his leash on him, but as soon as he saw the leash in my hand, he ran all the way back to the porch, leaving me alone in the dark. Needless to say, I have never ran faster in my life. I got back to the porch, let my dog in, everyone went back to bed, and I finally ate my chili, the only good part of the story. Now, I know there's no guarantee that it was whatever my brother saw or thinks he saw. After all, I'm still not fully convinced it even exists, but the entire situation was very strange. We live in the middle of the woods, we're used to wildlife being around our house, and my dog always barks at any living thing he sees or hears near the house. However, literally every single time he barks at them, we always hear them running away in the woods to get away from him. From tiny bunnies to a grown-ass bear, it's always the same. But whatever was in the woods tonight obviously did not care about my dog barking and growling and charging around the yard. It just seemed to move around anytime something new happened, like me calling for my dog or me going out into the yard. It seemed like it was just watching. Also, my dog has a very specific bark. It can be annoying as hell, but it's always the same. Whenever he sees or hears something near on our property, it's almost as if he's yelling, "Hey, get out of here." But he doesn't sound angry at all. I've even seen him charge at a full-grown male deer 3 times his size, and his bark was just the same old, "Get off my lawn." But tonight, when he was barking at whatever was in the woods, he sounded so angry and vicious. I don't think I've ever heard him bark or growl like that. I was actually shocked. Anyways, that's basically it. That happened exactly 24 hours ago now. As for the paranormal stuff in my house that I mentioned in the original email, it's been about the same. Just small things have been happening along with knocks on walls. It's not threatening at all, and I'll probably make a post about in the paranormal subreddit eventually because it's actually super interesting. Also, don't bother asking about rail cams. I know that we should probably get them, but no one in my house wants to pay for them, and as a broke college student, I'd prefer not to spend money right now. Any thoughts? MB.
Luminescent crawler humanoids observed by teens in local park. There's a local park that's a few blocks away from my childhood home. There have been a lot of weird experiences I had with my childhood group of friends. A few examples are weird war-like or Jumanji-type drums that would play while deep on the trails, people seeing lights flickering randomly in the woods where there shouldn't be lights at dusk, and people feeling like they're being watched or followed when they're alone. The local community decided to build a jungle gym and a few swings, as well as a shelter with picnic tables. There was a little ceremony and it was a huge success, lots of trips there as a kid and a lot of fun had. In high school, I remember going out there at night to clear my head. This was in 2010. I'd sit out on the swings and just text. One night I heard my text tone go off and I looked at my phone, but there were no notifications. It happens again and I realize it was in the woods behind me, about 100 feet or so away. It happens again. I was freaked out, so I head the other way and get on the road to walk home, and the notifications keep pinging in those woods. So I end up jogging and then running until I couldn't hear it anymore. I told some friends about this, and we ended up deciding we'd go back on the weekend and walk the trails at night and try and get it to happen again. I was hesitant at first, but we were all big teens. One of my friends was a boxer, another a lineman. It was November now, and the night we got together to go it was kind of sleeting. Not hard enough to be a problem, just enough to be kind of annoying. So we head to the park and get into the woods, walking around with flashlights. We weren't taking it super serious, and laughing and joking. We end up in a kind of field area near a fishing pond. All simultaneously we kind of feel uncomfortable and uneasy. We more or less all didn't want to wuss out, so we start to cross this field, and immediately I get goosebumps, and my neck hairs all stand up. We get to the other end of the field and someone jokes about that not being so bad. There were 4 of us and we all nervously laugh, before hearing a loud crash in the wooded area we just got to. All our flashlights scanned the trees frantically. Me and another friend turned the other way to check our flank and saw something we agree we can't even begin to make sense of. There for a brief second in the field, on the walkway, we both saw a creature that didn't move like any animal we have ever seen. It was almost luminescent as the flashlight seemed to shine back at us as it hit its skin. This thing looked like what I can only compare to as the Rake stories. It was bony, almost humanoid, but it was hunkered down, and it drug its body with the front arms, rather than moved with its back legs, and just slithered into the field. The 2 other guys still scanning the tree line, shout they saw something and just took off toward where we saw that thing in the field. Fight or flight kicked in. The other 2 of us just take off after them and we run, not stopping until we got out of the woods and onto the road. We stopped and stood there. We had our flashlights all looking at the woods, the sleet and our tired breathing the only sounds we could hear. Then the same crash again and what sounded like running footsteps. We ran all the way to my house. The second part of the story is that my 2 other friends who looked towards the woods saw something about 7 or 8 feet tall poke its head around a tree only 20 feet into the tree line. They said it had the same luminescent skin, that the lights reflected at them, but it had slits for eyes, like a cat, but the pupils were darker than black. They almost absorbed the light contrasting to the skin. This is the first time I've tried to put it down into text. We've all remained friends since then, and none of us can explain what we saw and experienced that night. I couldn't sleep for weeks and was so uncomfortable living so close to the park, I rigged my windows up with cans with pebbles in them, so that if something somehow messed with them while I slept, I'd be aware. We all kind of agree that with the fact my text tone was repeated, and other stories we've heard about Wendigos, skinwalkers, and the goatman, we all have decided that could be what is out in those woods. Since then, other people that I have never told this story to have also mentioned having bizarre encounters there, but nothing like this. Not sure I know anyone who has been to that park and into those woods who don't have a weird story. SK.
Crawler humanoid chases sisters in Gulf Shores, Alabama Nature Park. About 5 years ago, my older sister and I went to a nature park, a wetland so to speak, in Gulf Shores, Alabama. Of course we went at night so we could skateboard around cause you aren't allowed to. But you know, a 14-year-old trying to look cool in front of her 24-year-old sister. Well, we went just around as the sun was setting. For a little bit we got lost since the park was so huge and condensed with the thick woods. We were trying to find a bridge, a 20 feet or so bridge, so we can hang out just above the rushing river. By the time we got there the sun was hardly visible over the mountains. I looked around after drinking my water, and here is where the creepy stuff happened. As I looked at the other side of the bridge I saw a tall skinny human-like figure. I first shrugged it off like it was a person, maybe a ranger of the park. But then it got on all fours and walked away. I didn't say anything at first, mainly because I thought it was maybe a bear. I looked back at my sister as we chatted about boys and along many other things. Then I looked back at the end of the bridge. My sister did too, and we both saw the figure this time. At this point I was totally freaked out, Mind you, it's still not dark out, the sky was purple and orange, so it wasn't like we were seeing things like when your mind pictures figures in the dark. No. It was right there and getting closer. I told my sister to get the hell out of there. Her going first off the bride and down the hill. I went second. And as I turned to look at the bridge again, it was 5 feet in front of me on all fours once again. It stood there as me and my sister skated off, and this isn't even the end. I told my sister to head to the main building since there is cameras and lots of light. We skateboarded for what seemed like hours, every minute seemed to last eternity. As we finally get to the main building, we finally stopped riding our boards. Out of breath and scared, we both looked around. By this time, it was pitch black outside. We made a mad dash to the car, taking a path we have never seen before, but it was outside the park, which made us feel safer. After we got to my sister's Jeep, we both got in, hearts racing and scared out of our minds. And when we tried to leave, the gate was locked, meaning we couldn't leave since there was only one way in and out of the park. We got even more scared. We tried everything to get out. We even thought about just leaving the car behind and walking the 2 hours home. But we drove onto the sidewalk and got out of the park. To this day, I won't go back to those wetlands ever again. Even in daylight. Whatever that thing was, I never want to see it again. I can't stop thinking about it. And I'm almost 19. You can think this is just a story, but it really did happen. Me and my sister don't even talk about it to this day. Something changed between us, I could feel it after that day. DL.
All pale humanoid nightcrawler chases biker in South Georgia. I live in South Georgia, and I leave work at around 10:45 p.m., riding my bike for about 30 minutes to get home on a dimly lit road. Before I take the long ride home, I usually stop at my girlfriend's house, which is around a minute's ride from my work. On one particular night, my phone died once I reached her house. As I was about to leave, we both felt a slight feeling of dread. She wished me a safe ride, and I began the ride home. Just a little down the road, the light on the front of my bike died, which meant I was flying mostly blind. I stopped and turned on some small little lights on the spokes of my front wheel, so cars could see me for safety reasons. I know the road to my house very well, so I wasn't too worried about my light going out at the time. My neighborhood sits behind a gas station and a restaurant with a spacious parking lot on the other side of the road. Another important detail is that the sidewalk is on the side of the restaurant. As I was riding, very close to the entrance of my neighborhood, I saw a large group of people standing in the parking lot. I rode by not saying a word. I was startled when I heard one of them yell something that sounded like, "Hey." It was in a loud, forceful tone. I began to bike faster after hearing this. I didn't even look both ways or stop in front of the road. Rather, I just barreled through to the other side. As I looked behind me, as I was entering my neighborhood, I was horrified to see that the crowd of people were all chasing me on bikes. Terrified, I sped up even more through my neighborhood. I was very scared because I essentially had a beacon on me with the spoke lights on my bike. My neighborhood doesn't have many straight roads, so I tried to lose them as best I could. I am a very competent biker, so I managed to turn some corners very fast, and every time I looked back I saw less of them chasing me. After making a very precarious turn onto one of the straight long roads in the neighborhood, I rode as fast as I could. My house is only one turn away from the end of the road, so I tried to book it to the end. When I was a decent distance down the road, I took one last look behind me and was horrified. There was this huge thing chasing me. It was very lanky and tall, my guess is around 7 feet tall, and had a tall face. It also has very pronounced and long knuckles. I could not make out much detail other than that, but I definitely remember its pale white skin. It was running at me faster than I've ever seen anything go. I was going the fastest I've ever gone on my bike, yet it was still catching up to me on foot. It looked like it was exerting itself a lot by running that fast. It was leaning heavily into its run, and its arms were moving quickly beside it with its hands into fists. I let out an audible yelp due to the immense terror I was feeling at that point. I turned the final time onto a smaller street and then turned into my driveway. I jumped off my still moving bike and threw open the door, which was luckily unlocked, and ran inside. When my mom went to see what was up, I told her there was something chasing me outside. She ran to go lock the door and heard a noise that sounded like someone saying, "Hey," outside. My mom later reported it to the police, and they patrolled the neighborhood at night for about 2 weeks. It was recently that my girlfriend and I were talking about this again, and we realized that that thing was running faster than any human possibly could. She suggested it could be a night crawler, so I thought I would post my story. VS.
This is Lon Strickler. If you like this program, it would help us if you would give it a thumbs up. Then subscribe and click the bell icon so you get notification when we upload new first-person encounters. We have many more to come very soon. And by the way, if you have a suggestion or an experience of your own, please leave a comment.